Chairman.
So yes, I'm just you are there. I'll just be quite clear, councillors. The thing is, 4 years ago, and there's quite a few councillors that weren't here then, but 4 years ago, the council made the decision that they wanted the High Performance Centre to be in Auckland. They didn't want it in Tauranga. They wanted it in the city of Sales. They wanted it in the home of the America's Cup for New Zealand, and it does seem logical. The water's water, and it's Auckland, and why wouldn't we want it? And that's a personal view. So, Mayor Goff.
Yeah. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Look, it seems to me that the old proposal is dead. The partnership's changed. The location has changed. The source of funding may no longer be available, in the sense that if the proposal is to be outside North Shore, I'm hearing from you that the money was legacy money intended for the North Shore, so we would have to vote another $3 million, and that would come from debt. Because all of those things have changed, I was unhappy with the original recommendations, which had us approving the grant and delegating authority to negotiate the relationship agreement. I think we've got to get it the right way around. We can't agree to anything until we know what the proposal is, and we have no proposal in front of us. So that's the first point. Secondly, until you've got a proposal, you can't even start to think about a relationship agreement, and until you understand where the funding is coming from and whether the funding is available, you can't approve the grant. I think the Chair's revised recommendations are closer to the mark, and I think that's wise. I don't rule in or out a high-performance centre or a community sailing club, but I think we're starting from the beginning again, not trying to revitalise something that was there or was potentially there but is now gone. So what we need to do, and make sure that this new resolution does, is approve no money until we've seen a proposal, approve no relationship agreement until we've seen who the relationship agreement is with, and that's not even entirely clear yet, and then determine what our priorities are in terms of $3 million new dollars that we have not yet budgeted for. So if that's what your recommendation does, then I'll approve it. But I would have deferred, preferably would have deferred the paper till we had a proposal, because we don't know yet what we're likely to be voting for.
Councillor Darby.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And Mr. Chair, I know you've been working hard on this behind the scenes, and it may not be quite stacking up, but having listened to the Mayor's position, which I concur with, that we need to see the proposal at the outset and then work from that point, could you just take us through your recommendations, because I don't see that they sync with the position of the Mayor and myself in terms of starting from the point of receiving a proposal.
Why not withdraw it?
Just to give you the opportunity first, Mr. Chair.
Yeah, I'm just going to deflect and pass to Dean there, because we worked on this as a group with these proposals between myself and Dean and Sue. So,
okay. Sorry, I'm just thinking this through. So, in effect, we are responding to a written request from Sport NZ to consider this. And part of the issue for them is that, given the change in nature of the project and the timing of it, and the fact that the current funding expires at the end of this financial year, they are looking for some certainty. If we're able to give that to them, good. If we can't, then we can't. That's accepted. So you could take a note that a grant was currently budgeted for that facility. You could then invite Yachting New Zealand to submit a formal proposal, an outline of the proposed development for consideration by this committee, along a request for funding. And you could, in effect, you could simplify those clauses to that effect. That would be one option.
So, can I
just say an A, if we just added development of a high performance community sailing centre on the North Shore.
I would withdraw all after seeing.
Well, you've got a problem, if I can just come in again, Mr Chairman, with note that a grant of $3 million is currently budgeted for.
It's not.
Where that's not budgeted for if it's outside of the New Lynn Council. I really think the tidiest way of dealing with this is actually to withdraw it, and we can invite, of course we can invite Sporting New Zealand to come back, but it needs to be a proper detailed proposal. We need to know what the location is and what the justification is before we move on it. I just think we're getting ourselves into a bit of a muddle here until we know what we're dealing with, and at the moment we don't know what we're dealing with. That's the problem.
Mr Chair, I'd like to move that the item be deferred until such time as the proposal is received by Auckland Council.
Just point of order, Mr Chair. As I understand it, we're still in local board input.
Yeah, we are.
Don't we have to go out of that?
Yeah, we're
before
not
we
taking
start
any other
considering
resolutions. We're talking about this. This is the whole idea of having this here today, is to talk about it. And that's what this council is supposed to be doing. So we have Councillor Walker. Unless, sorry, Dean, did you want to add?
No, I don't have anything at this stage. Thank you. I do think that it's worth giving David Abercrombie an opportunity just to share where they're at as an entity, remembering this is their proposal. So if you were open to that, Chair, it might be worthwhile inviting David just to explain where they're at as a business.
So we have 4 speakers. Are we happy with David coming up? The speakers here?
Can I just make a couple of comments?
David, please come up.
Before we leave. I understood, when you say it's not budgeted, I understood it was in a separate line item. In council accounts that the $3 million is sitting in a separate line item in council's accounts, but I stand to be correct on that. That's probably more a question.
These raised from debt fund.
And that if that wasn't spent to the North Shore, then the new one would be debt funded. That's correct. But the existing $3 million in cash is sitting idle somewhere, and council's been collecting interest on that. I would suspect.
It's not.
So
It's not. It's budgeted for.
Okay.
So budgeted for, and we've allowed for interest and depreciation in our budget. So effectively, we still have to raise it, but it is budgeted for.
And might I suggest under B that if it was just changed to defer any grant, then I think that might still allow for the intent of the motions.
Well, it kind of has to be that grant because at the moment there is no other grant that we've allowed for. It is specifically tied to that. So, welcome.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for the opportunity. Councillor Darby will understand the complexity of where we are in this position, with the initial proposal being on Gould Reserve in Takapuna, the 2012 Takapuna Beach Reserve Management Plan somewhat derailed the Gould Reserve proposal. It was suggested to the developing group, Harbour Access Trust and Yachting New Zealand, that we move from Gould Reserve to the proposed site where the existing campground is, on the understanding that the lease was not to be renewed. And then, of course, the Super City came along. So things have changed. Now, where we are currently is that Minister Coleman is still committed to developing a high-performance centre. And if you go back to the name of the initial centre, which was the NASC, being a National Ocean Water Sports Centre, it wasn't specifically for sailing. So it was a high-performance centre, yes, for sailing, but it also had a water sports component. So that could be waka-ama, stand-up paddleboarding, kayaking, surf, and a number of other options from people who were interested in being part of that facility. And the community component of it was just over 30%. And our view on that hasn't changed, in that we're still keen to build a facility of similar services. The thing that we would like to add to it, if we're not going to go to Takapuna, is that facility would also have a residential component, which of course creates issues depending on where you're going to build it. Now, Minister Coleman and Sport New Zealand are still committed to building a high-performance centre of this nature, and as of Monday, I've put out a feasibility RFP to 5 different groups, and that RFP is to look at various options around the Greater Auckland precinct and to determine where the best site for a facility of this nature would be. That work is due for completion in about the middle of May, and with that we'll be doing a business case around the centre. So that is where we are. Now, if we lose the council's $3 million, then we, in effect, would be hamstrung in terms of going ahead and developing a facility. It's a critical component to what we're trying to do. You know, I think most of you will have seen that we just recently brought the Youth Worlds to New Zealand, and the economic impact of that has far exceeded expectations, both to major events and to AT. So we know that facilities of this centre have created and built on Auckland's reputation as a city of sales and as an event centre for yachting. And I think to lose this to Auckland would be a crying shame. And there are people within our community who maybe are not quite as patient as I've been through this thing, as I've been here for I think about 6 years, who would be quite happy to move the High Performance Centre out of Auckland. And that's not something personally I'd like to see done. And I think Auckland is the city of sales. It is hopefully going to be the home of the America's Cup, and it should be recognised as such worldwide. So I would ask that Council look favourably on supporting it. I'm very, very happy to work with you. The Harbour Access Trust has moved away from supporting what we're doing, not so much supporting it, but the volunteers that are involved in that trust have done a huge amount, and they have done enough, and they've passed the baton back to Yachting New Zealand to run this along with Sport New Zealand. But I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Okay, so we're just going to take specifically questions of David, and then we're going to ask Grant and Danielle and David to step back from the table after those questions so that we can have the debate which only the councillors can partake in. Other questions specifically? Thank you, Councillor Casey.
Have you got other sites on the North Shore?
We looked at a site in Torbay, so you're probably aware that we've spent an awful lot of time and investment in developing the Torbay Boating Club. But once again, virtually anywhere else you go in Auckland, and in fact in New Zealand, you're going to be on reserve land, and we've probably found that building anything on reserve land is incredibly difficult. So if there is a site that is identified, we'll look at it. We've got a couple of options that we're going to consider. Akarana isn't something that we're going to look at as part of the feasibility study, but whatever we build, in order to get the government funding for it and Sport New Zealand funding, is it has to be fit for purpose for a high performance centre first and foremost. The community component can be bolted into it very, very easily. But if it's not fit for purpose, then they're not going to fund us either. So we will look at everything from basically Gulf Harbour to Akarana and bits in between. Many of you will be aware that we've done at least 2 feasibility studies previously on what is required to deliver a fit-for-purpose high-performance centre. But at the moment, we don't have a site that would be better equipped than the Takapuna site.
Which isn't going to be.
Specifically a question to David, Councillor Simpson.
So I just want to confirm when you think, I noticed that you wrote your letter, or Dean wrote the letter, but your feasibility study that's happening is going to be finished when?
Middle of May.
Middle of May. So to that end, Chair, I would suggest that we defer it till May.
Yeah, we're asking questions, not opinions at the moment. Questions? So we've got John, Councillor Watson, sorry.
Yeah, just 2 specific questions, and ones go to what's been reported of what's happened, transpired to date. It was reported that the New Zealand Community Trust, which had pledged up to 2.5 million, had withdrawn that offer. Is that correct?
No, they haven't withdrawn. What's happened is, due to legislature, they were unable to continue to roll over the 2.5 million. 700,000 of that is actually from Lion New Zealand, and both have committed to continue funding our proposal, but the money's been put back into the consolidated fund so that it can be used. But the commitment from both parties is still there.
Okay. The other one was to do with the